Hello, BookTube. Hope you had a happy Halloween, happy spooky season, and some good reads along the way. I myself had a pretty good month. I had one soft DNF, read two classics, one contemporary, and a biography, which I wasn't able to finish, but it's okay. It continue into November, which I'll get to more about that a little bit later. Start off with the soft DNF. It was actually it was called Oryx and Crake by Margaret Atwood. This was a last month's selection by MJ and her Fable Book Club. I'm with the Band Book Club. Very different novel than the one I'm used to reading. Essentially, a dystopian novel takes place in the future, where human engineering has gone terribly wrong and brought down the world. Essentially, like I said, normally when I hear the book dystopian, it's really not my thing. Kind of stay away from it. But as I'm sure you can all attest to, we always try and read new things out of our comfort zone on here. I will say it was interesting. It's one of those novels where you start off in like the present day, and we backtrack a little bit into like our main character's past, and like we kind of got to play catch up to see how we ended up where we are today from where we began. It's pretty interesting. I must say, like, I honestly I was running out of time during the month. It was, like, baseball playoffs are on. I had a lot of things taking up my time, so I did put this aside for now. I am curious to see how this finishes and see where this goes. When I finish it, I'll probably try and get to it maybe the end of the month or next month. As soon as I finish it, I'll let you all know. Now for the first classic I read, a lot of you are reading this as well this past month, is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Got the Penguin Classic right here. Let's see. Well, first thing, the only experience I've ever had with Frankenstein, and like, there's been a ton of movies, all different things over the decades too. The only thing of Frankenstein I've ever seen were the two movies, like the original Frankenstein and the Bride of Frankenstein. So, having said that, take everything you know about Frankenstein or everything you think you know, clear your head, start with a blank slate, because this could not be any more different than anything that followed it. For starters, the book starts off with four letters. A man named Robert Walton. Like, who's this Robert Walton guy? Well, he's on an expedition to the Arctic Circle, and these four letters he's writing, each one is to his sister. And then, like the fourth letter we come across, he talks about how he saw this man floating on a block of ice. Right now, you might be confused. Like, that's a Frankenstein story? Yeah, that's how the book starts. It's like, so he saves the man, and he wants to know, like, hey, tell me about yourself. How'd you get up here? And this man essentially goes, picture it, Sicily. No, not like that, but it is that type of story. Like, apparently the guy, he does turn out to be Victor Frankenstein, and rather than just introduce himself, he starts off with this whole life story from the very beginning, and learns about where he tells a story of where he went to school and whatnot, all the people they came across with, and then we get to the part where he just like drops a bombshell in the middle of his conversation, how he brought a dead guy back to life, and he left him in the apartment, and one day Victor comes home and the guy was gone. I know it sounds like I'm being comical or making fun of it, but no, I really did love this book, but that just made me laugh. But on a serious note, the the monster himself, we really only see him for like two scenes. He comes in like toward the middle and then at the very end. Hands down, the best parts of the story. Like, essentially, the whole. I guess you say the novel takes on the concept of like playing God. It's one of those classic stories. That a mere mortal tries to play God, but you're not a divine being. You don't know what you're in for. In this case, Victor Frankenstein, he brings a dead guy back to life. Now he created this being. This being didn't ask to be born. He's stuck with the way he is in life, and now Victor's got to deal with it. And things can get a little out of hand and out of control at times. The main reason I wanted to read this now too, aside from the fact that it is the classic it is usually I can't help but draw parallels nowadays to like AI and robots and everything. Like the psychology just seems to be the same to me. Like, trying to beat death, bring a guy back to life, trying to make new life today out of with a robot. I'm no psychologist, but I would love to hear the professionals do a deep dive into this to see what parallels there are, if there are any. It just seems aside from being the classic it is, it just seemed very relevant at this time in history, because you can say with all the AI and all the robotics. Next up, over on my Spotify account, I listened to the audiobook for The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. And this is one of those classics. You can get this classic and a bunch of others for free, actually. Like, so it's available as like a free ebook in a lot of places, or like in your Audible or Spotify accounts. It's included for free. So like, yeah, definitely check that out. It's free, so it's definitely worth checking it out. Once again, this is another one. Like, the only experience I had with this story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde was the Broadway musical. If you've seen my community tab the last week or so, I've been posting a lot of videos and clips from that show. And in that story, like, Dr. Jekyll was like this tragic figure, like, once again trying to play God. Like, he meant to do good in the world, trying to essentially cure a form of mental illness. So when you think about it, and he got more than he bargained for. He didn't know what he was in for. And let's see, it talks about like man's duality. You know, we all have this this other side to us, and so essentially his goal was to try and beat it and get control of that side. Didn't work out. Now here's what I'm not going to go into spoilers here, but here's what happens in the book. Dr. Jekyll is not present at all. Right at the bat, that's very different. The main character is this man, Mr. Utterson, who's a lawyer. And as the title suggests, he's investigating the strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Like, apparently Dr. Jekyll, like, he leaves everything in his will. He changes his will. He leaves everything to this Mr. Hyde, who people have met, by the way. And like I said, like, neither man is present during the whole time. It's almost like a little police investigation here, and we follow Mr. Utterson, who is the main protagonist. And the only time we have any contact whatsoever, indirectly, with Dr. Jekyll is the very last chapter, which is like a handwritten confession in a letter. We find out that, like, what he was trying to do, what his intentions were, and we realize he's not the. I said in the Broadway show, he was like a tragic but sympathetic figure. Not this case. He was one mean SOB in the short story. And I'll be very vague. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I do want to say a little something to try and whet your palate a little bit to get intrigued to read this. It does end with kind of an ambiguous ending. Like, who wins? Like, do we ever see Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Hyde again? We don't know. It's like, I thought it was it just seemed kind of slow at times as you were reading it, but once you get to that finish, it really was a nice little punch, a nice little way to end it amid Dr. Jekyll's written confession. All right, so those are the two classics. Now it's time for my contemporary read. I read Sleep Tight by J.H. Markert. Now, like I said, I read the two classics. I wanted to read something fairly recent. I heard pretty fun things about this one, and it was a fun time. You know, you read it once, it's fun. Then, like, I'm not going to be. It serves its purpose. You know, like, it's fun to read once. Like, I'm trying to figure out how to describe this. Like, I'm going to try and mimic Philip over at Poe Reads to Write when I say this. This book was a glorious symphony of clusterfuckery. I mean, like, this book had so much going on in it. Like, do you like tropes? Like, what trope do you like? Because everything's in here. You have the kid, quote unquote, a kid, drawing pictures. Like, who's that in the photo? We have oh God, what else? I thought of it a moment ago. Just give me a second. Yeah, I remember two more things. We deal with multiple personalities. Our main character, like, she goes, I was there as a girl, and like, she's trying to remember everything, but she can't remember everything for some reason. And, like, oh God. And actually, nowadays they, you never notice this with like contemporary works today. Like, whatever's trendy of the day, it's like they gotta throw it in there, just to be part of the story. So in our case, our main character has an opioid problem, which apparently just goes away. It comes and goes. Apparently, it's not really much of an issue. But yeah, good Lord, there was a lot going on in this book, but it was pretty fun. All right, let's bring it on home, folks. The biography I was reading, I mentioned this in my previous videos too. I was reading The Secret Life of Houdini by William Kalush and Larry Sloman. Now, in case you're wondering, you're probably wondering, like, why Houdini? Like, why this for Halloween? Well, aside from the fact that it is Harry Houdini, most famous magicians ever. Also, just naturally being in that occupation, he has a lot of secrets and mysteries about him. But also, the main reason I wanted to read this was because Houdini passed away on Halloween. And there's an interesting story surrounding his death. Like, I can't wait to get to it when I finally finish this. Houdini was obsessed with like spiritualism and like trying to contact the dead. And one of the greatest mysteries about his life, when he died, he gave a message to his wife. Nobody knows what that message is to this day. But the years following Harry's passing, his wife would hold seances. And if the spirit coming through uttered this message, then she would know that it was truly him. Creepy stuff, ain't it? So I meant to read this, like, first of all, this is a gigantic book, like very small font. There are a lot of pictures along the way too. So I did lose track of time, but it's okay because November is nonfiction November. So it's perfect. The spills over. A little crossover. So that kind of worked out nicely. Yeah. I will be done with this for sure. I will be doing a November TBR video. Of course, I'll throw this in there, and I got 2 others that I plan on getting to as well. I'll probably film that tomorrow or so. Okay. So yeah. So I should say this too. So far, one of the best biographies I've ever read. So these 2 guys, they mentioned this in the intro. They went through like thousands of documents, like little news clippings about him, letters to and from him from all sorts of people. They would go to England and meet people who knew him, and they're like, oh yeah, here's all these letters we have. Like, they went through a ton of documents. And what I love most of all, which separates the best biographers from an average one in my mind, they know how to take all the facts and present a story of the man. They don't just give you like dates and times. They're able to tell you a story, to do like a little deep dive into the man. Hopefully you learn a little bit more about that person. And that wraps up October, folks. Like I said, I'll be doing my November TBR, share with you what I'm reading. I'm watching all your November TBRs too. I'm curious to see what everyone else is reading. Okay. Have fun, everyone. Take care.